Hey YouTube, this is Alice at Wonderland Speaks. I'm coming to you today. I think this is Thursday or Friday, January 14th, 2021. I I stay in transition. I'm always in the midst of something. For those of you, this being your first time checking out my channel, uh, thanks for watching. I hope you continue to watch. I generally have something for everyone. I do health, wellness, lifestyle, cooking, baking, those sorts of things. Um, so, uh, if you like what you hear, uh, you can, of course, subscribe, like, first of all, like, post, and subscribe. So, today's topic is going to be about interracial relationships. And I did one video on this, and I'm always, I would like to say, I'm never surprised, but every now and again, I'll get something, and I've watched a lot of videos recently, and I don't know. I come from a different time. Growing up, as long as I can remember, I've had conversations with people that are my age, and of course, I am a woman of a particular age, and it never amazed me some of the things that people will say. I recognized, I guess one would say late in life, that if I wanted to, I've always had natural curiosity about people. I always extended myself in forming friendships, relationships. I lived in uh, a mixed environment as a young adult. Uh, I've always lived around all kinds of people growing up when we were kids. Our parents exposed us to everybody. Their best friends were white. So that was the only life I knew. And then growing up, I watched my siblings marry a couple white women, also an Indian, and of course Spanish. So I've always had that exposure. And then as I grew, of course, I had a natural curiosity, but never that curious that I said to myself, oh, I think I'd like to date, even though I had questions, but not to that degree that I said, oh, one day when I'm old enough, I'm gonna date. No, no. I found white guys attractive. And again, I said this in my other video. I never shared that with anybody. That's something that stayed in my head. But in reality, my first relationship, my high school was predominantly black. Um, Even though in high school there was one girl who had a relationship with a white boy, and I had never seen that, not like that, not anybody my age, not during that time. Now, again, I grew up in a rural area, and it wasn't that common, and the time wasn't that common. This was the 70s, so if there's anybody young out there watching this, you're like, damn, she's really old. I wasn't even born yet. I'm trying to give you an idea of the time, and think of it this way. In the 60s, we had the civil rights movement, so think of it like that. I was around for that. So, getting back to when I was in high school in the 70s, and I only knew one girl, one guy, they couple years older than me, but in my high school that dated, and but still, I never said to myself at that point I would. If someone had told me, even when I was 30, that I would have a relationship with a white man and even marry a white man, I wouldn't have believed it. I actually had cousins say to me when I shared with her that I was dating outside our race, she gave me this look and she said, you know, you always said you would never do that. I said, when I don't believe I told you that. I don't believe I told you that. But if I did, I changed. So, I mean, and that's all I could say. And then what happens at that point when women find out that you date outside your race, and especially if they're white, they have questions. The first question, the obvious question is they want to know, how do they smell? They want to know how white men smell. And I would say this, they don't smell. They don't smell like me. They smell like white guys. The skin to the touch is different. And again, I'm going back to my, in the beginning, when I first started, everything about it was different. At that point, to give you an idea, by the time I started dating outside my race, I had already been married, already had my kids, already divorced, all of that. And then I made that decision, as I said, in my 30s. So it was a very conscious decision, one I thought about long and hard. Now, keep in mind, I grew up with white people. I got white people in my family, okay? I come from a biracial family. I do, on my mother's side. So it's not just that I had relatives that married white. My mother's side, my aunts are biracial and they are whole sisters. So it's not that I didn't know about it, but what I knew about it was kind of like, in my mind, so far removed, it wasn't really real. If that makes sense. I'll put it this way. Growing up, my father, very dark-skinned man, very dark-skinned black man. And my mother, she came from what would be considered fair complected, and all her sisters were really light skinned, had good hair. Black people out there know what I'm talking about. Long curly hair. That's what they had. But that's not us. Those were my mother's sisters and her brothers. That was all of them. Okay. So I knew all about all that. But again, it was never anything I thought about, not really seriously. But then when I did, when I got in my 30s and I thought about it, because I found myself in a work environment and in the neighborhood that I was living in as a young black woman, uh, my neighbors, the white girls, all my friends were white. They were all white. And now in high school, they were all black. And I had one girl who was white. She was a little strange to me. And I don't know if it had anything to do with her color, but she was kind of clingy. And race had nothing to do with that. To me, it was just a little odd. So I kind of distanced myself, but I was always very sensitive of people, so I didn't hurt her feelings. Um, when you're a teenager, you got like 5 or 6 girls you run with, we kick it. We went to bars and hung out and all that, but they were all predominantly black bars. Now, were there ever any white people in there? It was minute, if any. The corner turned, as I said, when I got in my 30s, and I had been divorced and had a few relationships at that point, and I I had been thinking about it. And then again, I had moved in a neighborhood and all my neighbors, uh, my age, were white. And the relationship started with me needing a babysitter because I was going out every weekend. And they lived right next door on both sides of me. So we formed a relationship. Uh, the neighbor lady had 3 teenage daughters, so that's a lot of babysitters. So we formed a relationship. She told me she liked to kick it. I liked to kick it. She didn't drive though. I did. I had a car. So we started going out. Now, it never, we had a club where I came from that was mixed. You had black and white. So we could go to clubs that she would be comfortable at, and we could go to clubs that she would be comfortable at. Now, she never dated black. No, she never dated black. She dated everybody else, but I never saw her with a black guy. She dated Mexicans, Indians. At that time, Arabs were really popular. They were, you had a lot of I would say exchange students, not really exchange. They were guys who had money, who came over here, and their parents were paying for everything. So um, they had a lot of, how can I put it? They had a lot of money. So they didn't mind spending it. So that was her thing. So that's kind of where I started at. Um, in that environment, and it was different, but I made up in my mind I was going to keep an open mind. I got to learn a lot of things about a lot of people. Did I date any Arabs? Yep. Arab, Iranian, let's see, who else? I don't know, maybe a couple others from east. That's really far east. um everybody everybody brings their culture to a situation. I think I mentioned that before. But of course, I can't cover my whole life. We don't have enough time for all that. I'll just say at this point that that's where it started for me. And it was an interesting ride. And I would say uh, it was a point of no return. Now, in the midst of this, you might ask, well, did you still date any black guys? Yeah, yeah. I wasn't serious about anybody. You might say, well, in the midst of dating all these other guys, was there anybody? Keep in mind, I'm one of those love hard kind of people. When I love somebody, I love really hard, and then it takes me a long time, even when it's bad, takes me a long time to really realize, okay, this is really over. So this is in reference to my kid's dad. I have two kids uh, by the same guy, and it was not a good relationship, and I will not at this point go into all that. Just suffice it to say he was not a nice person. I met him when I was 17, and we had two kids together, and those are the only two I have. And I'll be the first to say one of my first attractions to him was that he was very light skinned and he had good hair. Now, I know, but I was very young. So what do I know? I knew nothing. So that was the attraction. He had hazel eyes, very beautiful long hair. He looked like an Indian. His grandmother was Indian, so I guess he was. But he was a black man because his father was black. So, but his Indian features were very apparent. As I said, he had gray eyes, very light skinned, very long hair, uh, about 5'9", about 155 pounds. And I fell head over heels, primarily because I was so young and stupid, and I didn't know any better. And one would say, well, he must have been the first guy that you'd ever been with. Yeah. He was my first. Uh, I had never been with a guy. He was the first one. I had dated, but keep in mind, I came from a time when everybody wasn't having sex, and it was a big no-no to get pregnant. So, no, I had not ever been with a guy. I dated a lot of guys, but never like that. So, he was my first. It took me a long time for a lot of reasons to get past him, but I did. So, What else? This has probably been really boring. I haven't really touched on a lot other than that I was going to talk about interracial dating. Um, as I said, uh, when people find out you date outside your race, they won't ask you in a group, not unless the group is a group that uh, a group I'll say they feel comfortable. Oh, this is something I concocted. I know what it looks like, tequila sunrise. But technically it's not. It's tequila. I'm going to call it a mango tequila because that's what I used. Mango. Oh, that's delicious. So, I went through a really difficult time for a lot of reasons, but I'll say this: the first man who appreciated me and who was nurturing to me and just gave me undivided attention, I fell head over heels for. And that was many years later. And I had never had anybody treat me that way. Um, and it was confusing because I listened to a lot of tapes and I hear black women who say they dated white guys and the guy acted a certain kind of way. You know, and I had a guy tell me this, and I mentioned this, I believe, in one of my other tapes, that they were not comfortable with the way that he was acting because he was different. Well, I can't speak for anyone else. Yeah, he was different because he was really, really, really nice. And by that time, I knew who I was. Not completely. I'm always a work in progress, but um, I pretty much knew what I wanted and what I didn't want. And it was sort of, as they say, deal breakers. And so when I met this person, and in my mind, I was not going to date a white guy who treated me who couldn't treat me better than what I was used to. So he had to be a whole lot better. And he was. He was, absolutely. And yes, I fell, I guess I would say, as in love as I can. As in love as I can with somebody. My mother says that I don't love people. I think we all have a different interpretation of what that is based on our own life experiences. But the point is, he was very attentive and nurturing, very respectful. Um, he was always buying me gifts. We went out a lot. And keep in mind, I was in my early 30s, so I was all up for all that. And I was very honest with my feelings because I didn't know anything about that. I never, but the first thing I noticed was uh, the smell. Uh, the smell was different. The skin texture is different. Um, let's see, what else? Um, I felt like there was a natural curiosity. He didn't necessarily ask me a lot of questions in reference to race. Um, I I had a few questions, but for the most part, I was so caught up in everything that there wasn't a lot of questions. You know, there wasn't. Uh, I mean, he was the first man to wash my hair, paint my toenails. Um, I mean, just things you would never think of. He was just, and I didn't have to ask. I didn't have to ask. He just would do it. And again, I had never had that. I can't speak for other women. I can only speak for me. And he exposed me to something I had never experienced before. And oh, yeah, I ate it up. I loved every bit of it. And, I had a lot of people when I would talk about this man, and they would say, well, how long were you together? 3 years. And you might say, well, what happened? That's another story for another day. But uh, I'm always in transition. And you might say, well, did he ask you to marry you? And no, no. At that time, I don't even know if I would have. It was years later before I decided that I would. Actually, in 2002. Now, keep in mind, the guy I'm talking about, we worked together. He was actually my supervisor. So that's how that started. We were together every day. So there were all this flirting, and you might say, I've had women ask me, well, how do you know when a white guy is flirting? I will say it is different. It is different. The way that they interact, because keep in mind, they're not sure either. They're not sure. Because keep in mind, what they know about us is what they've seen on TV or their own personal life experiences. And if they're a guy who hasn't been around a lot of black women, then you're a stereotype. He's going to think you're somebody from a ghetto unless you show him something different, and then express to him what it is you need. And that's first. You don't let it come afterwards. You let him know where you're at and what it is you want from him. You already know what he wants. So he can talk about it if he wants, but you need it in your mind to know that you already know, because he's a man. And that's what you always want to remember. When it all comes down to it, you're a woman and he's a man. But before you get to that, you be sure and make sure that he's clear on what it is you need. Because what you don't want to do is to get involved with this person. I heard a girl say today on a show I was watching. It was called Grapevine, and she talked about, it was a group of 4 women sitting around, and the question came up, and this one woman said, of course the question was for everyone, but this one particular one, she said that yes, she had. And it's always the first response when people find out if you have. They want to know about the sex. She says, oh, I did one. Now, everybody's got a curiosity, because I think 2 of the women were married to white men. And the other woman, I believe she was biracial anyway. So the attention kept coming back to this woman who said she dated one and that was it for her. She wasn't going to do it again. And I listened to her, and all I could think about was, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So you tried one and that was it for you. I think you do yourself a disservice. Now, don't get me wrong. You're not going to out the gate get the good one. Not as a rule, okay? Not as a rule. Because there are some mess out there. I don't care where they come from, okay? This is more about you. You expressing, communicating what it is you want, okay? And being clear about that. Not in an aggressive sort of way, because if there's an attraction, you know it, he knows it, and this is way past sex, okay? I'm not even talking about sex, because this man, the one I just got through talking about, who I had the 3-year relationship with, we danced around for at least 6 months before he convinced me to go on a date with him. So no, that hadn't happened yet. This was strictly in the workplace, and I still wasn't sure if I was going to do this. And as black women, we're thinking about a lot of things. We're thinking about, can I do this? Can I let him touch me? And all these things we think about, and then we start thinking about uh, uh, society and family and all those things. And I thought about all that, all of that. But then once we started our relationship and we started spending time together, all of that stuff just kind of goes to the wayside. And you don't really think about that, not unless something comes up and you're on that page. Now, there were times when he would say to me, you know, those guys over there, they're watching us. And I didn't see it, but he would see it. I said, okay, well, what do you want to do? He said, I don't want to do anything. Because anytime we were in public, he always wanted to make sure, well, it wasn't just that. He was that kind of person. He always wanted everybody in the room to know that we were together. Very touchy-feely, holding hands, those public displays of affection, all that kind of stuff. So, and again, that took some getting used to because I wasn't used to that either. So much about him I wasn't used to, I wasn't. So it was a little, I learned that that wasn't me. I can tolerate certain things, but certain things it's just not who I am. I can do a little bit, but only to a point. I'm not really big on public displays. As I said, I can do a little bit. If we're in a park or something and we're walking and he wants, I don't have a problem with the holding hands. It's you got to kiss every few minutes in public. I'm not for that. I'll do a little bit of it, but I'm just, that's not who I am, and that's just me. So, like I said, we dated. It was great, and then it wasn't. Um, you might say, well, the next guy, what was he? I guess I would say once I started dating outside my race, I didn't really have a serious relationship with a black man um, ever after that. I did see some black guys. I dated some black guys, but I didn't have a committed relationship with another black man. I don't think. I don't think. But don't hold me to that. No, that's not true. I did. I did. Many years later, I dated this guy who lived in Georgia for about 2 or 3 years, and he was an asshole, you know. And I have this kind of rule. I make them work for it. I don't just, because I'm so enamored of you, I'm just going to let you. Something that stuck in my head years ago that I was told uh, is that when you meet someone, you're getting their best. You're getting their absolute best. And people don't get that. They really don't get that. They really think that it's going to get better over time. I promise you it won't. And if it appears that it is, it's extremely temporary. You're getting their best when you first meet them. Does that mean it's going downhill? No, that's not what it means. My point is, you need your eyes open. You need to be able to see what is before you and recognize that this is what it is. And if there are things that stick out to you, and you want to make sure you know what your deal breakers are, because we all have them. There's certain things that's just, it's not happening, or you're not gonna absorb, or you might think, oh, I can deal with it this one. No, you can't deal with it at all. And why should you? You shouldn't. So, as I said, um, I met my next husband in 2002. I was in a restaurant having dinner. I was alone, and there was this guy in there. I'm kind of like this. Some say I have a roaming eye. I don't think I do. I think I'm observant, and I'm aware of my surroundings at all times, even when it doesn't appear that I am. But I had seen this guy over there with these two little girls, but I didn't think much about it. And so I'm sitting there and I'm looking all good. I was about a size 10, and I had been to church, and I'd come in there to have dinner, and I'm walking because it was a buffet. Uh, I'm going over to the buffet, and this was, like I said, 2001, I think. And I go over to get my dinner, and I'm walking back to my table, and I'm sitting there, and these two little girls come over. They're like 10 years old, and they're giggling, and they say to me that they're like their father's wing woman. They both come over and they're talking to me about their dad, and that was the most unusual thing I'd ever seen. I said, and why didn't your dad come over here? Now he's sitting over there watching them do this. And they said, well, he's shy. I said, well, if he's shy, then you shouldn't be over here because he's got to talk to me at some point. So they just kept coming to my table. And I came in there to eat, I ate, and all I could think about was, hell, if he can't come over here, there's nothing I have to say to him. And I ate and I went out to my car. Then here he comes, and now he's ready to talk. And I did notice that his little girls looked like they were mixed, but still, I didn't know him. I didn't know anything about him. And we talked, and he asked me out, and I think we talked for like 15, 20 minutes in the parking lot. And he asked me out, and then from there, we started spending a lot of time together. You know, he had a good job, which is like way up there for me. You got to have the foundation, you know. I mean, I had a good job, and he had a better job. We both worked in the automotive industry, but he worked at Chrysler. So for any of you who know anything about the automotive industry, yeah, a good job, good benefits, all that. But anyway, we started seeing each other. Next thing you know, he asked me to marry him. And I didn't even, it wasn't something, oh, I got to think about it. I'll let you know. I'm not that kind of girl. Either I am or I'm not. And I said, maybe. And we just kept seeing each other. And then there was a situation. I'm not going to get into that now, but it had to do with my ex. And what I remember is this man who I hadn't known that long was there, and he never left my side. In the hospital, he never left my side. And this was back in a time when in a hospital, you couldn't come and stay in a hospital room unless you were married, and we weren't married.